about the 16-8. So 16 hours ideally of no food and 8 hours where we're not worried for the purpose of this video what you're eating and how much you're eating. So if you finish your meal at 7 o'clock at night, we're talking about having your next meal after 11 o'clock or later the next day. And obviously you can play with that variation. Now, a lot of people have difficulty with intermittent fasting in that they either find they're too hungry, they might get lightheaded, they just find it too challenging. And equally, I recently read an article where an individual was told about how she was aging herself because she was losing her muscle mass. So this video is about dealing with all of that, because those who say it doesn't matter what you get in the other 8 hours, I would wholly disagree with. I think it does. So the way to be able to do it effortlessly is two things, very simple. First is the evening before, that last supper, if you will. Your day doesn't begin when you wake up in the morning. Your day begins with what you did the night before. We all know it. You only have to go on a night out to know that. If you get what you do the evening before right, your next day is totally different. So that last meal, whatever you have the night before, will determine how easy it is to do your fast. If you get in enough protein, and I'm not so much worried about vegetables, carbohydrates and fats, you can do that too, but if you get enough protein, it will sustain you. And apologies, I say I'm not worried about carbohydrates. If you have too many carbohydrates, you're likely to feel hungry the next day. So in other words, I intermittent fast pretty much all the time. If I were to have a high carbohydrate meal and a low protein meal the night before, I'd find it very hard to do, and I'm used to doing it. I find the way to do it, and when I'm working with my clients to get them to do it easily, is you need to get in enough protein. And by that, I'm looking at a minimum of 200 grams of fish or meat, if you eat fish or meat, which is a reasonable amount, and I'm emphasizing minimum, or do it by having a yogurt and fruit to get the extra protein, or a protein shake after the meal, so you can have less of your fish or meat. Equally, you can do it through lentils, chickpeas, you can do it through omelettes and the likes. It doesn't have to be fish or meat, but you want the equivalent of around about 40 to 50 grams of pure protein. You can have the vegetables with it. You can have a moderate amount of complex carbohydrates, your pasta, your rice, your potatoes, but do get the protein in and some fat, so oils of any description, olive oil or the likes. And that tends to sustain you. If you don't get enough in, you will feel hungry. So that's step number one. The second step is kind of the obvious one. Don't jump into the deep end. You can, but why make it hard? Your body has this whole, you've heard of it, this circadian rhythm. It gets its rhythm. Once it knows what you're doing, it'll start switching into it and it'll just feel normal. So you don't have to go from, say, an 8-hour window to a 16-hour window in one shot. You could go, if it's an 8-hour window. Now, most people will have a 10 to 12-hour window. So say, for example, it's 12 hours. Then just maybe increase it to 13 or 14 on day one. Do that for 2 or 3 days until it feels more natural and effortless. Then increase that to 15 or 16 and so on and so forth. So you don't have to do it in one shot overnight. But if you get enough protein in the evening before and you eat properly, don't have a high carbohydrate meal, that will make you hungry, I promise, the next day. Keep it higher in protein, higher in fats. You will find it much more effortless. And you just won't feel like eating. And then once you get your rhythm with it, just increase the window gradually. And then, as we all know, like all habits, it just becomes effortless. Your body recognizes that this is when you eat, and it will only start to feel hungry after the 16 hours or just coming up to the 16 hours rather than the 12th. Very simple, and it does work.